Father, we thank you for everything that you have done. We thank thee for sparing lives so we can meet here to plan for your people. We ask that you come by here, be it our thoughts or actions or deeds, is our prayer in Jesus' name.
Thank you very much, member. Are there any apologies for absence? We have quite a, well, three. Member Warmington, Member Daly, Member Jackson. They have sent apologies.
Member Davis.
Yes, and Member Davis. Thank you. Any other apology? All right. Let me welcome members of this committee to this sitting. I think I can safely say that this sitting is more than overdue. I believe because, well, it's as a result of unforeseen circumstances that we were not able to have previous two meetings. But I'm glad that we are all here in good health and we can continue with the work of this committee. I want to say how pleasing it is to see in attendance the representatives from the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development and its agencies. I know firsthand that you guys had some challenges, and I am very glad to see that you're all out looking lovely and healthy to participate and give us some information as relates to the matter at hand. And of course, the representatives from the National Water Commission, a very critical agency as well, as it relates to any development, any area, and not only because we want to discuss the matter of Portmore becoming the 15th parish, but the National Water Commission is a critical government agency that has played its part in ensuring that we can develop our country in an orderly fashion. Member?
Yes, Sir Chair, I'd like to apologize for Member Delroy Williams, who is preparing for the State of the Nation at the Senate tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Noted, noted. Okay. Oh, yes, let me also welcome the representatives from the parent ministry, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, who is in attendance as well. I believe, members, because of the delay, I don't think we need to go into any long discussion. And let us go straight to the read of, well, the minutes, I believe, were read. And I'm sure we can just go into the confirmation of the minutes. Are there any correction, amendment, submission? Correction, amendment, submission? Correction, amendment, submission? Can I have a motion for us to accept the minutes? Moved by Member Miller, seconded by Member Campbell Rodriguez. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Matters arising from the minutes? Matters arising from the minutes? I'll just say it. Listen. Members, you will see before you a document from NEPA. We had requested some additional information from NEPA. It is before us. You can take note of it and include it in your file jacket, along with other documents that you have received so far through this committee. Matters arising from the minutes. Matters arising from the minutes closed. Thank you very much, members. Moving quickly to item 7, and at this time, we will take the representatives from the National Water Commission.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Talia Gibson.
My apology. Could you just introduce your team as well?
I will. Right. My name is Talia Gibson. I'm the Senior Director of Water Policy and Monitoring at the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. I'd like to first extend apologies for Permanent Secretary Audrey Sewell's absence from the Joint Select Committee today. With me today, I have representatives from the National Water Commission, Mr. Mark Barnett, President, and Mr. Garth Jackson, Vice President. Thank you. How do you want, are we going to make a presentation, or do you want presentation made?
Well, yes, you can just give us a brief presentation, and if there are any questions to be asked by the members. You have also provided us with some documents as well for us to examine at a later date. But you can just do your presentation now and just highlight the salient points. As you know, we are looking to, contemplating developing Portmore into the 15th parish. And of course, there will be challenges as well, and even the whole management of water in Portmore has become, it has always been an issue. Not only the use of potable water, but also sewage treatment and so forth. And with the proposal for the Bernard Lodge development is no longer a proposal. It is what it is. It is happening now as we speak. How does that impact Portmore in a whole? And of course, you know, a lot of persons, members in here are from Portmore, and they would, at different levels, whether you live in Portmore or you represent sections of Portmore, the cry of the people is about lack of water, adequate amount of water, water lack of, and all that stuff. So I think I've set more or less the platform for us to have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Barnett to just make a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Talia. Good afternoon, members of the committee, colleague, agencies who are represented here. So, Chairman, I'm just going to be as brief as possible because when we received the request to comment, we were a little bit not sure how to proceed because oftentimes the development plan is what would have informed the services for water and sewage. So, notwithstanding Portmore as it is an existing community, and I would not wish to go and try to figure out when it started. Obviously, it's before my time. But in essence, I just give a backdrop in terms of the services that is provided, how it is provided, and some of the things that we would have embarked on even without knowing of the plan for a 15 parish. So Portmore in essence receive, and I'll deal with water first, Mr. Chairman. Portmore in essence receives its water from both the upper and lower Ryacobre Basin. There are two primary sources. There is a set of alluvial aquifers within the Bernard Lodge area, and as well as water from the Ryacobre system, what we term in NWC the Eastern Network, taking water all the way from Tullow Spring through a series of additional wells along the Ryacobre embankment that serves both Kingston and Portmore. So, in general, there is, I want to say, challenges on the alluvial wells that exist. Those are in the lower Ryacobre Basin. And so the more reliable source for us serving the area is through the Tullow Spring system that tees off at the Kemanas intersection. The issue of what is being done in that regards, currently we have, I think, licensed capacity for water supply of about 6 million imperial gallons from those wells, in addition to what we would have considered as adequate amount of the Ryacobre, which varies between 3 to 5 million gallons per day that is channeled from that system into Portmore. The overall coverage of infrastructure network spanning the entire community and we're talking about predominantly the original, as I call it, Portmore plus Greater Portmore all the way out to Elsha is approximately 95% coverage of service. The In relation to sewage, in the early stage in the development of Portmore, which was predominantly a dormitory community, our sewage system development was basically surrounding each discrete housing development. So at some point, there was about 5 to 6 different wastewater treatment plants serving the community, or the communities. In 2013, thereabout, we embarked on a program of the treatment facilities. That exercise would have seen us decommissioning 5 wastewater treatment plants, leaving only 2 operational. So it's served by the Soapberry wastewater treatment plant and the Greater Portmore wastewater treatment plant. Everything else has been converted into a pumping facility with transmission, conveyance system. We have strategically looked at how to address future wastewater flows in that area, and we believe, based on what currently exists, both Soapberry and Greater Portmore does offer the best option for a centralized system, and removing those facilities and removing sewage treatment from with the communities, which was the intention, and have them more so on the periphery, so to speak. Currently, in terms of improving sewage services, we are currently doing a major rehabilitation work at Greater Portmore. And we are also in the process of looking to expand the Soapberry facility. And I just want to interject just to say, just for total clarity and transparency, that the Soapberry facility was always intended to serve the needs of Kingston and St. Andrew as the primary area for where it will receive wastewater. However, we thought, based on the urgency and the circumstances at the time that exist within Portmore, there was a need to act to reduce and to eliminate certain environmental concerns, in addition to the concerns that would have been raised by NEPA and the local planning authority as well, the municipal council at the time. And so we would have resolved, to a great extent, those systems. Mr. Chairman, like most cities, communities, the matter of water supply infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, is not a situation that is fixed at any given time. And by what I mean is there had to be constant investment in those infrastructure right throughout the period. So while we would have been doing all of these works, it is understood that the nature of the infrastructure requires constant replenishment, if you will, or replacement in some consideration. And I can therefore indicate that one of the things that we observed, and based on time past, the development of wastewater and infrastructure, especially for the collection system, were predominantly through asbestos cement pipes. And I want to just interject here, because I know once I said asbestos cement, it always comes with a red flag and everybody is scared. However, in the 70s or thereabout, when these systems were being installed, Jamaica at the time had an asbestos cement pipe factory, and which would have made sense at the time for time. And with the age of those pipes now has to be taken in terms of what level of investment that would be required to sufficiently satisfy, one, any change in the development order that may take place in Portmore as a result of changes in its status now, meaning we oftentimes know that cities often renew themselves, And in renewal, there are increased densities that actually goes with that. So there must be consideration in the future, how, and even presently, to ensure that we can manage and satisfy the existing demand. But want to just highlight that when you look at any renewal that may take place within the geographical location, the corresponding infrastructure need to be part of the consideration, because oftentimes what we look at is the superstructure that is above ground and not the substructure that support the superstructures. So in a sense, based on the plans that we have, we believe those plans are sufficient and consistent with the submission that we provided to this committee, is sufficient to service the demand up to 2040 as the development arise period. Other things that we are doing on the water side, Mr. Chairman, is we currently now advance in what we call a non-revenue water, which is there to make sure that efficiency is within the network, and that activity is should commence in a very short, well, this year, during this calendar year. We completed the baseline review, and work should commence anytime between now and September in terms of advancing improvement within the area. How do we serve the community and the communities? We have in recent times installed a transmission main between Caymanas going along I-95, and we have, as part of our long-term reliability and flexibility strategy in supplying of water, is the rehabilitation of a 20/18-inch transmission main that goes between Caymanas Nagazet via Gregory Park. That's the old route, if you will. Currently, we have new pipe on the new road, that is I-95. We have to look at, and something that must be considered as well, and happy that the fire department is here, the whole matter of storage, store volume, and we currently have a major storage facility that commands most of the supply, if you will, in Portmore on the, I want to say, in Old Brayton or in Brayton, Marley Hill predominantly. But importantly, there must be the need for consideration of additional reservoir for the city when it is so decided. And I just want to put that on up front. Other implications that we believe will be sufficiently supportive of the community is that we are now in an advanced stage to go, I want to say advanced to construction, if I may, Talia, of a 15 imperial million gallons water treatment plant. And I know one of your members, Mr. Chairman, may not be so happy about that prospect, but the issue of increasing production along the Aquifer is something that we are pursuing, and the municipality of Portmore will benefit from that investment, which is anticipated to be concluded, well, to be fully operational within 2 years, 2 years' time. We, like all systems, there are always challenges, like all systems that we operate. There are various challenges that we encounter. Portmore has been affected from those challenges. And one of the things that we believe, which is an opportunity Mr. Chairman, is how do we build reliability and how we move beyond this consideration to provide that level of support to ensure that when a new parish and subsequently possibly a new city is considered, the whole issue of water reliability is a thing that is fully frontal in consideration. And by that I mean, while NWC rely heavily on the Jamaica Public Service for its power supply, to ensure that you achieve the overall objective of the plan, we believe there's a need to ensure that there's a reliable backup system to support reliable delivery of both water and sewage services in the mix. And by that, it would require that level of support in ensuring that that can be done. So, you know, Mr. Chairman, I think probably I could continue on and on, but I'm going to stop right here and possibly ask if members have any questions that they want to have clarified or anything that they would love me to particularly address in satisfy some of their concerns. If you don't mind, I'll take questions now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett, for that presentation. Before I open the floor to members, I just want to ask two questions, or three questions. You mentioned the Bernard Lodge development earlier.
No, I did not, and I deliberately didn't. There's a reason why I didn't, Mr. Chairman, because this is an NWC's presentation.
Okay, well.
So, sorry, but the Bernard Lodge, Mr. Chairman, under the Bernard Lodge development era, there is a...
Mr. Barnett, you don't have to go there. No. You do not have to go there. You don't have to go there. This is about Water Commission.
Yes.
And it is safe to say that the... Follow the lead of the chairman, man. Follow the lead of the chairman. Follow the lead of the chairman. The National Work Agency, when they came and did their presentation, they highlighted that going forward, I know that it has been, should have been the case, the coordination between different agencies. That is a sore point, not only in Portmore, but throughout Jamaica. I don't want to say it's a lack of coordination between agencies, but it's something that is very troubling. Oftentimes, you will see, after waiting for years to get your roadway rehabilitated, to see a backhoe from the National Water, a backhoe with the National Water Commission logo on it, started to do some work. And I'll try to be as delicate as possible, you know, but I think a major concern going forward is that level of coordination between government agencies, especially the Water Commission, National Water Commission, and the National Work Agency, and of course the utility companies as well. The other utility companies, whether it's the cable companies or even the JPSCO, that level of coordination is seen. I'm going to hold back on my question as it relates to the Bernard Lodge development. But I think it is safe to say that based on your presentation, we will have adequate water supply for the area that is currently called Portmore. And I'm sure that if there should be any extension of that area, that adequate supply will be in place. Adequate service will be in place to support same. All right, so members, any question from Mr. Barnett? Member Campbell.
Mr. Barnett, you say that Sewage was designed to deal with the offtake from Kingston and St. Andrew. What's the capacity of Sewage?
I'm going to give you the capacity in meter cubes per day. It's 75,000 cubic meters per day of sewage flow. That's what exists now.
Right. And so it is the offtake from Kingston and St. Andrew.
Oh, the offtake from Kingston was probably 40 or so % of that up to the time when we connect Portmore into that system. So what needs to be understood in the process is that you build a treatment plant, but obviously your sewage collection system does not expand at a fast rate. So even now, while we're doing expansion across the city, it's still not at the capacity as yet, but we don't want to wait until the capacity is exhausted. That's why we're now looking to advance a process to expand and improve treatment output.
Right. But with the rate of development, when do you estimate that it will reach its maximum capacity?
So Sudbury would have been in operation since 2008. Now it's 2021. I would say if the rate continue as we are seeing now, I say within another 5 years, which is at the time we should be able to.
All right.
Yeah.
So where are you along the road to expanding? You have the development financing, you have all the designs and everything for the expansion of
Okay. Very good question. So the approach that we're taking as it relates to Sudbury is through getting private sector involvement in that process. So we have gone through a expression of interest phase, which is a pre-bidding phase. We have shortlisted possible entities, and we are now at the stage of issuing the RFP to provide that transactionary advisory services before we then go to select the private party in the process. So we have started the process, and we are at the process now of issuing an RFP call.
So you'll be able to meet the demand at the end of, say, 5 years when you expect the present.
So two things that has to be understood in the process. So while Sudbury is what it is, I don't want us to forget that there is Greater Portmore wastewater treatment plant. So because we have split the flows into a east, so to speak, and a west flow, if I may use it in that context. And what we're now doing at Greater Portmore is intended to increase the capacity by 30% of what exists. And it also should be noted, based on our own analysis, what would have been projected when we developed and developed that wastewater system, it was predicated on a particular per capita usage of water. Our assessment is that the per capita usage of water that is serving that same facility is less than what we would have predicated the designs on. So even with an expansion to an additional 30%, there is still latent capacity as a result of the lower than expected inflows into that facility. So it needs to be understood that the two works in tandem.
The system which you are contemplating is a circular system where because we have a problem with water generally.
Yeah.
You alluded to some of us, the members, who may be upset at the level of extraction along the Rio Cobra Valley. Well, let me just declare my hand because I have an interest in St. Catherine. That's, where are you along? Because some time ago, either yourself or one of your representatives indicated to the, I think it was the PAAC, that you had plans to move water from the north coast through Monegan down into the Yuatan, because that, if we continue to extract the water from off the Rio Cobra Valley there, the natural consequence of your doing that is going to allow salt water to seep into the aquifers, and agriculture as we know it is going to die. Are you contemplating that scenario, and what is it that we're going to do to offset that?
So we have contemplated that plus other scenarios in terms of resolving, or let's say, provide a more sustainable flow of water to the southern belt. I want to use it in that context because it was not intended exclusively for, say, a Kingston and St. Andrew and Portmore only. So the contemplation really is how can we move water from the northern water basin vis-a-vis probably the White River system and move it to a point up on the higher elevated area and gravity that down on the southern side using a series of inline turbines that would generate energy from a hydro perspective, and also cutting the pressures because you're going to have high pressures coming down, and then serve between Bull Bay and all the way out to Porus. That was the idea of that eventually. We have looked at an alternate, and we weren't getting the level of support. And the problem that we have in moving a lot of the projects, and even though we may conceptualize them, they ought to be studied for investment purposes. And we are not there yet. Because we can speak of a concept, but unless you put it in a manner that somebody can look at your project and ready to either finance it or take it on as a private entity to operate and to build and operate, we are not there yet. It's still in the concept stage.
Given where we are, there, you know, and well, just yesterday, I know the Prime Minister was with President Biden and Blinken and all the other people, and there's the issue of climate change and the impacts, you know, with all action. Yeah. And I'm particularly concerned about water, the security, and when you take that Moneague from in the north, as it were, and St. Catherine, which is a significant agricultural body, you know, area. If I understand the point you're making, it's not, you know, it's not really designed for us, as it were, present state. We have to design. That is designed for more for people who want it to come in for investment purposes. But don't we run the risk of not having the investors come if we were to continue with the limited scope that we have now, where we're just taking off the water, and we kill? You know, I'm saying so, not in a technical sense, but I already, because I've had the benefit of speaking with some of the technocrats who say that the salt water has already started to seep into the plains of St. Catherine. So how long before, you know, it concerns me. And if we want to build, but if we lead the people of Portmore to believe that they can have an expansion because you'll be able to supply them with water, yes, you'll do that, and they'll rely on it. But at the same time, there are a set of people in northern St. Catherine who are at risk. Their livelihoods are at risk, and I perhaps want you to address that.
Okay.
Where we can have a happy balance between.
So I'm going to give you as broad a response as is possible, and there will be some specifics in it. I want to just address one particular matter in terms of the issue of saline intrusion in our freshwater resources, especially on the southern section of the on the lower Aquifer basin. Let me put it in that context, which means it's on the flat per se. So we all understand what transpired in the Burnham Lodge area. Those are alluvial aquifers. They are susceptible to changes. We also know that in our estimation, the level of irrigation that was taking place as a result of the farming would have supported those aquifers as well. We also know that those aquifers, especially one in particular, is very shallow, and it is obvious, and there's need for some remedial work. We also recognize that if we continue to do illegal sand mining, or sand mining for that matter, in that general area, you are destroying that water resource. That is a known fact. But outside of that, what has been done in relation to protecting and providing some resiliency for our water supply? NWC in I think 2016-17 completed an investment in what we term an aquifer recharge. We spent over $1 billion, not because of our responsibility, but because of the need to ensure that we have a reliable and sustainable water supply. So that aquifer recharge system was constructed in the Innswood area, and it is there to support abstraction along that southern belt as part of the resiliency, water reliability, and to prevent, as you indicated, any form of saline intrusion into those aquifers. That system is now up and running, albeit it is now under the management of the Water Resources Authority, because that's their forte. They are responsible for all water resources. NWC is just an operator. We just abstract and use, and they should take care of the resource management. The issue regarding looking at the pump, and we call it the pump hydro storage type of arrangement, taking water from the north to the south. We believe that is one such solution. We don't think it is the end all of all solutions to water issues. And that is one of the things that we have to get accustomed to, that we put in a solution, it is not the end all of it. It's not going to solve our problems to eternity. We also believe in the past, Mr. Chairman, we were very much against considering seawater desalination. We have to really consider that in the mix as well, because, simple, while at the time it was very expensive as a result, and still is in terms of our current energy costs, but there are other technologies that can support the application of seawater as an option for water supply. And so that is something that we have to seriously look at, because, again, we don't know. And I would be the first to say, and this is why we as engineers, and I have to declare that as my profession, we as engineers like to know how something will perform before we even recommend it for it to be constructed. That's just the nature of what we do, because while we may look and say we want to move water from the north, we also have to consider what are the implications environmentally from the watershed that we're going to pull the water from. How are we managing that? We don't have a good track record of managing our watersheds because we don't control everything that happens in there. How are we going to support and consider subsistency in terms of those who live in the watershed? And how are we going to take care of that? We don't have a fix on how that will perform. And so even though we will consider moving water from the north to the south, it is an option, but it has to be fully understood how, when we put in a system, that aquifer is going to perform when I start to do sustained movement of water. We can say, yes, it flows to the sea now, but it is a complete different thing if you have to dam it to pull from it, because when you start to put backflow on a system, that water may go somewhere else. I don't know. So there's some amount of unknown, and that is why we often want to make sure we review, assess the thing properly. So when you put the infrastructure down, and you're talking about billions of dollars, it is going to serve the purpose for what is intended, not just for the first 5 years, but for a reasonable period of time beyond our lifetime, possibly. So for us, we think water supply has to be a combination of stuff, not just any one solution. So when we talk about NRW, it's about improving the efficiency for what I've already been producing. Quite frankly, right now, as we produce water across the island, we produce ample water to serve every single Jamaican that is living here. So if I have a high NRW, it makes sense for me to improve my efficiency as part of my first investment because it's something that I'm already incurring a cost to produce already. And so moving into Portmore is just about doing that to ensure that rather than I have 50% thereabout of wastage in my system, I reduce that to at least an optimum level, which we consider, based on our assessment, anywhere between 25–30%. And that additional water is there to either serve more people or to ensure more reliable 24-hour service. So that is the type of mix that has to go into any water supply consideration improvement across the country, albeit we're speaking of the subject matter at hand. I hope I clarify as much as possible. It's a big topic, you know, and I'm passionate about it. Just bear with me. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett.
Yes, sir, Chair. Thanks very much. Sir Barnett, let me thank you for that report. I realized when the chairman asked earlier if there's any question, yes, you know, you looked at me straight in the eyes because yes, you knew that questions were coming. You mentioned earlier that the Water Commission has no problem with the capacity in terms of it becoming a parish or when it becomes a parish. You mentioned as well that there's an extensive program in the south side in terms of sewage. And I'm just wondering if there's any plans, since we're becoming a parish, to, you know, lay the foundation in terms of the southeast side. Because as you rightly know, that on that side it has some serious sewage issue. And collectively, you know, on a weekly basis, you know, you can have maybe 3–4 different breakaway where that is concerned. So I just want to know, in terms of preparation for Portmore becoming a parish, where do we stand in terms of sewage on the southeast side? And the chairman articulated earlier in terms of some of the surface that needs to be resurfaced, you know, right, especially that's one of the major problems that we're having on that side as well.
Okay, two matters. I'm going to, I'll take the latter first. It is no secret that there was and continue to be some, albeit that we have improved our collaborative effort with the Works Agency, who we have entrusted in more ways than one to undertake most of our road reinstatement activities, except for those that we may have engaged specific contractors who would be doing either new construction or emergency works on our behalf. But one of the things that I want to indicate as well, and the chairman raised a point of when a new road is laid, and oftentimes the outcome of that is what is spoken about, but the process that goes on in between is never known. And I could give you a simple example, Mr. Chairman, not necessarily in Portmore. We were asked to look at an area that is going to be resurfaced, albeit was never programmed in my budget, but we scrambled and we were able to do the work. Almost $100 million of main replacement. You know, what was the work that was being done by the other entity? $10 million. So I just raise that to emphasize that while we want to do everything that needs to be done at the time, it is oftentimes not as easy as it may seem. And unless we have a more coordinated budgeting process that synchronizes your work program with what I include in my budget, then we're going to have those little mismatch from time to time. If you notice, most of the places, Mr. Chairman, and you're a man who have traveled, I know, you are a man who have traveled. Most cities, most municipalities, and Mrs. Rodriguez would know this very well from her previous sojourn, most municipalities control road, water, de-icing, everything. So it's really one budget that takes care of everything. So they're synchronizing it. When you have an entity like an NWC separate, under a different ministry, NWA in a different ministry, well, now we're in the same ministry. That's good in a sense. But albeit, it still doesn't allow for that mesh oftentimes. And oftentimes, how work is done is sometimes based, and we have to call it a spade, based on how much you lobby, and it gets on the program, and then we then have to scramble. That's part of the problem. When we do other repairs, we do acknowledge that by virtue of a number of issues that we have to look at as well, Member Robert, is how much do we need to effect a series of cuts that may happen on the roadway? And as it is, NWC rely heavily on the ability of the quantum of work. So no asphaltic plant is going to start their plant and operate just for one truckload of mix, which will cover my needs. They're going to do it for to get scale, but my situation is suffering because to get scale, I may have to wait. And sometimes, to be honest with you, if people don't pay their bill, me can't pay my bill. It's just a reality of the situation. And I'm going to say, Mr. Chairman, you know, we're talking about Portmore, but to effect the level of service that a new parish or a parish deserve, it requires every stakeholder play their part, because I can only respond to your needs when you would have been satisfied with the basic service that I provide, water and sewage. But if there's any issues that arise in between, it requires an expenditure that has to come from my coffers, which is the ratepayers' bill. The other issue in terms of sewage, we do agree that there is a age situation, and as I indicated earlier, the whole issue of asbestos cement pipe, which was the predominant conduit at the day, over time would increase a number of factors. We know that there are some amount of cottage industries in some of these yards, liquor shops. They use a lot of chemicals, they do a lot of little things, but we know that it is part of people's survival. I mean, we are real, but the impact of that, it does deteriorate my sewer pipe. And therefore, one of the things that we're looking at now, based on frequency of collapse, which is what they are, we have to look to see how we can program sections of collection system for replacement. And now we're replacing everything with PVC, which is more, can withstand all of those situations that goes into the sewers.
So if I may again, Sir Chair, what are you saying, that for the time being, we will just cater to the collapse as they go one by one?
No.
Or, okay.
For the time being, what we're saying, we look to see which of the streets would have a series of collapse, and we will then program that for our entire fulsome replacement. That is the strategy. Because we can't do everything at the same time, but we have to use certain occurrences as a priority approach.
Can I place for the record, Sir Chair, to the President of National Water Commission that his team in Portmore, they have been very responsive. Mr. Johnson, his team, Mr. Daly, Sewer, and Mr. Barton, Water. Yeah. Whenever there's a collapse, they are there to give service as best as possible. I just want to place that on the record.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Barnett and your team for the presentation. You spoke about the development plan being the basis for the water services offered in a particular area and projections on that. Is that the case for the Portmore as an area? Okay. Or has that happened a little bit more haphazardly?
So,
I have a series of questions.
yeah.
I want to start there.
So, just to allow me to rest a little bit, I may ask my VP engineering to step in as well. So, but in general, what I can say about Portmore, as I indicated earlier, Portmore developed in phases based on the dormitory nature of the area. And those would have been informed based on a particular demand and the type of system that is going to be there. So we think in terms of how the development went, there was a more involvement of the involvement based on what would have been projected. We do understand as well that while we would have projected for a particular size community, in Jamaica, we often use the opportunity to expand, and that creates its own demand, which may not necessarily capture. In other words, most persons expand on their houses. Most persons, so you may develop for 3 or 5 people. It may end up to be 7 and that type of thing. Those are demands which you can't necessarily know will come at all based on what would have been projected. But we think based on the infrastructure that is currently there, how the infrastructure is laid out, it is able to support current and future demand up to at least 2040. Yeah.
Let me explore this a bit. What are the imperatives in a development plan that inform what you set out as water services? What are the factors, just generally, what are the factors you're looking at?
So in a development plan, you need to know who is going to be where and what is going to be where as first order. So you want to know where your industries are. You want to know where your people are going to be living, and if they are continue going to be living there. You want to know where your light commercial, like your shopping areas, are going to be. And because each of those sectors, if you will, would require a different demand for service, it would also inform what infrastructure you put down. It will also inform how do you deal with the waste that they generate, if you're going to deal with it at all. Again, when you have that type of segregation, it helps you to determine how to manage and what type of system to put in place. So usually and oftentimes the water infrastructure would have gone in before you put in everything else. That is usually the approach. So when persons come to develop, they are not coming to tell you what they are going to put somewhere. You are going to tell them up front that having gone through this development plan, this is the only thing that can go there because the system is already inexistent to accommodate that type of development. Oftentimes that is not the case here in Jamaica, and oftentimes water follows behind the development because we're never sure what is going to go where. And therefore, when I raise a point to say, while Portmore as it is now is an existing community, we know that, and from experience, and we're seeing it in Kingston, and we're not oblivious to the fact that the same thing will occur elsewhere, that while you do that determination, there must be an overall plan to say if we're going to redevelop the area, we need to know what goes where so that at least the infrastructure can be known in going to support that level of redevelopment.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. So at the end of the day then, what really turns on parish status of Portmore for the NWC?
Well, you know, I want to say that I'm not sure that NWC is... if you ask me if we're able to supply Portmore with water and sewage service, we will say yes to you. And I'm sure that is what would be the basis of us participating in this process. But in terms of what everybody else does, for example, are there ample fire services as an example? I'm just using that because it comes to mind immediately. Do we have adequate road network in the community? Do we have enough ICT to support all sorts of other stuff? I think those are in a similar state as you would ask us. If we're saying for Portmore we need 8 million or so gallons of water per day to support everybody all the way from Gregory Park, Christian Penn back to Elsha, we say yes, that is available because that is our projection. We couldn't then say otherwise in terms of the determination of a parish or not a parish, because we're only looking at what we are capable of in line with the demand for the service.
So ultimately, it's about geography of industry and population and density of population.
Yeah. And your service industries that you're going to be having there.
Right.
Yeah. Your employment sector, if you will.
Okay. So just so that I'm clear, there is a development plan for Portmore at this point that the NWC is guided by in terms of how they project work to be done and so on, currently and in the future.
So our that's basically what drives the activities that we would have done. So I indicated to you earlier when we made the decision to invest in putting in, what was it, about 5 kilometers? How much kilometers of pipeline? 3? The I-95. All right, about 9 kilometers of about 20-inch pipeline. That was informed to provide that reliability in service and to create the demand, to satisfy the demand, knowing very well that there is development that was happening further south, Elsha, and not so much what is happening per se in Phoenix Park, but to ensure that existing communities within Portmore would be adequately supplied, and supplying having alternate as well.
Just a final quick question. Can you just clarify for me what on earth is an aquifer? Because I'm trying to discern the meaning, but I don't think I'm so clear.
A lot of persons call it aquifer, but it's really aquifer. So it's really an underground flow of water to which I would have to drill sometime 100 feet, 200 feet, all 400, in instances 700 feet rather. To extract that water, and it actually replenishes over a period of time to allow
it's a natural system, underground system. Okay.
Natural.
Thank you
so
so much.
So when you hear we talk about wells,
yes,
right, it is associated with wells.
Okay, so an aquifer flows from a well or flows into a well?
No, the aquifer flows. The well pulls its water from the aquifer.
Thank you so very much. I'm not an engineer.
No, man, that's fine.
Member Morris.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barnett, and following up. Okay, thank you. Following up on Member Golden Campbell's very good questions, I want to find out, it has been mooted that for high-rise buildings to become a part of the Portmore architecture. And I want to find out if your current plans anticipate that, and in light of the current problems that we are having with climate change and prolonged drought, if such a development strategy is advisable. That is the high-rise buildings for Portmore.
Before you answer, Mr. Barnett, I think Member Morris wants to ask a question, and correct me, member. Will the Water Commission, National Water Commission, be in a position to provide the flow of water to high-rise building? Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the question is very. The concern really is, for us, is we two things. We are not necessarily dictating whether it is high-rise or single family, single storage, townhouses or whatever. What we are mainly interested in is what the demand is. And that is the important thing for us from a water supply perspective. We would not want to get into the conversation, Mr. Chairman, as to whether you go 5 floors, 10 floors, 6 floors. However, what we would dictate to prospective development changes is that you must put infrastructure in place to get the water that I supply to you to the highest floor that you're going to put up. Because you're not going to be able to get it from the NWC system deliberately. Because the issue for us, and I just clear it right so that the committee members and others can understand, the reason why we stipulate that we're not providing water beyond the 2nd floor is because of one main thing. It is the system pressure that is going to be a problem, and my NRW is likely to increase, and it simply means I'm going to have more leaks on the system. It is counterproductive for my infrastructure, and you're going to be complaining. General, the public is always going to be complaining, there's so much leaks, how can they not fix it? But because I'm trying to serve the highest floor in a building. We're not doing that. We're saying, put a tank, put an on-site pumping system, move the water to where you want to do. I will supply you once we know what that demand is. That's how I will respond.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett and the team from National Water Commission. I must add that over the years we have seen significant improvement in the quality of service in the Portmore area. I recall earlier days residing in Portmore as a young man, well, as a boy. You know, you had certain days you know you can rely on the lack of water. Remember that those days, Campbell Rodriguez. Remember Campbell Rodriguez. So we have seen a more reliable service delivery in Portmore. We must commend the National Water Commission. So, you know, we beat it sometime, but we have to applaud it when we see improvement. I believe, though, there needs to be some level of proper coordination between the government agencies, especially the NWC and the NWA. And I know from a planning perspective, budgetary perspective, it's difficult. But I think that is what most of us members and even persons living within, not only in Portmore, but throughout the country, where the National Water Commission and the National Work Agency work in the same area, that there must be some improvement in terms of coordination. So maybe you need to figure out a way to align budgets to ensure that, I mean, once work is done, it is done in a coordinated manner. I don't think we have any more questions for the National Water Commission. Mr. Barnett and your team and other representatives here from the, yes, madam, from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Thank you for this well-informed presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll at this time take the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Yes. Members, let me just use the opportunity while we wait on the Ministry of Local Government. Madam Beckford had indicated to us that there was an updated figures from the Ministry of Local Government. So you can refer to that during the presentation. PS?
Sir. Ready? Okay. Thank you, Chairman. And members of the committee, good afternoon to you. Indeed, the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development is happy to be with you this afternoon, having been unavoidably absent for the last, I believe, 2 appearances due to matters beyond our control. So this afternoon, I believe we have the full complement of the team based on the terms of reference given the last time. And with me are Miss Sophia Knight, Senior Legal Officer, Mr. Rupert Price, Senior Director, Parochial Revenue Fund Branch, Ms. Simone Barnett, our Director, Urban and Regional Planning, and Ms. Anne-Marie Malcolm, who I believe is well, not immediately behind me, to my left, who is a director in the PRF branch. And we're represented by the agencies which we believe you also wanted to hear from. The ODPEM, Mr. Richard Thompson, sitting in place of Mr. Leslie Harrowford, the Director General, and of course Mr. Horace Glaze, Senior Director. Also sitting in for the Commissioner from the JFB Jamaica Fire Brigade is Acting Commissioner Mr. Warren Malcolm and Mr. Sean Martin, Acting Deputy Commissioner. And in place of Dr. Vernon, who is unavoidably absent this afternoon, is Aisha Wawa Hope. She's the parish manager for Portmore. And in place of Mr. Audley Gordon, ED NSWMA, is Mr. Edson Carr. And behind me is the lovely Ms. Trika Lewis. She's the secretary for the Board of Supervision. So, Chairman and members, we shared with you a script at the point when we were expected to appear, and we further updated this document with this sheet because we had engaged on the services. So at the time when we made the submission, we did not have the transportation centers and the abattoirs information, so we added those 2 columns just for the record. And we also did a PowerPoint presentation as we take you through. So I won't be the only one presenting. My team will be engaged as best as possible. And so the ministry is proposing an integrated local governance approach in respect of Portmore becoming the 15th parish. I believe when you listen to the NWC just now, you'd have heard Mr. Barnett made reference to the fact that to effect the level of services that he believes will be required, we must have a coordinated effort amongst the stakeholders. And so the ministry spent some time to look at local government in the context of the concept of a parish. And we have identified that local government has always been constituted on a parish system. And historically, local government would have seen various parishes being whether increase or decrease. So between 1664 and 1687, the number of parishes fluctuated under the English and increased in number until 1867. And we took some time to look on the work also of Brian C. Lawrence, who wrote that as an institution, it is almost as essential as national government, and like that, it exists in many forms. More importantly, local governments would have been influenced by the Morant Bay Rebellion, but let me just maybe go back to the first slide to make up an observation we also deduced, and it is that between 1664 and 1867, the number of parishes which fluctuated under the English, we realized that the scholars and the historians have documented that this was due to expanding population and development, as we are seeing now in Portmore. And so we just wanted to give some credence to what took place after the Morant Bay Rebellion, which influenced changes in government with a reversion to the Crown Colony government and the abolition of elective legislative assembly and a replacement of the vestry system. And thereafter, the number of parishes were reduced from 22 to 14, and this is now captured in the Counties and Parishes Act of 1867. And so, the nature of local government and the concept of a parish, according to Brian C. Lawrence, is that local government is a decentralized administration democratically controlled by local communities. And you will recall, Mr. Chairman and members, that the concept of local governance and local government was or has been captured in the Constitution, has been so entrenched under the local the amendment in 2015, and I believe when Ms. Knight speaks, she will expand on that somewhat. And so, to strengthen the whole local government approach, you would also recall the 3 strategic laws: Local Governance Act of 2016, the Local Government Financing and Financial Management Act of 2016, and the Local Government Unified Service and Employment Act also of 2016. And so, we wanted to capture for you the historical context, which is what is presented in the first component of the paper, and we also wanted to present to you the legislative component in respect of the constitutional authority of local government governance, financing, and services. Ms. Knight.
Thank you, Pierce. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Pierce would have indicated the historical context, and now I will continue by just setting out the legal framework, just to indicate that the Constitution sets a legal framework for the local government system in a broad manner. But interestingly, when we did the amendment, what we said expressly is that there shall continue to be a democratic system of local government for Jamaica. And under Section 2.4 of the Constitution Amendment Local Government Act 2015, it says that the purposes of local government shall be to, and I'll read it briefly for you, encourage and assist the effective participation of local communities in the affairs of local government, give local authorities the ability to provide local public services and facilities and to carry out other related activities for the benefit of local communities and the wider public, and the ability to perform such regulatory functions as may be conferred upon local authorities by law. Also, to facilitate the management, improvement, and development of the resources of local communities. Now, with respect to the Local Governance Act of 2016, this sets out the governance framework. So currently, local authorities are categorized as municipal corporations and city municipalities or town municipalities. With respect to Portmore, Portmore is designated a city municipality currently, and the council comprises of a directly elected mayor and 1 councillor for each electoral division within its area of jurisdiction. So in keeping with the guiding principle and the mantra of good governance, there are certain functions that are required to be carried out by a local authority, and in particular Portmore City Municipality at this time. And these include carrying out of designated local services and regulatory oversight in respect of local economic and social activities, promoting, spearheading, and coordinating local sustainable development, ensuring good civic order, spearheading, fostering and promoting economic and social development, and disaster preparedness. But not just preparedness, we speak to mitigation, recovery, and emergency responses as well. And I will add as well, importantly, identifying, mobilizing, collecting, and optimizing sources of revenue that are available to local authorities to finance their operations and service delivery mandates, and importantly in this context, to allocate the resources according to the needs of inhabitants in the particular jurisdiction. Slide. Always important is the emphasis on participatory governance, and Portmore City Municipality may also engage in participatory mechanisms. And these would include promoting, establishing, and utilizing appropriate mechanisms to facilitate participation of and collaboration or networking with all relevant stakeholders who exist or operate within the area of jurisdiction. So these stakeholders will include members of parliament, members of parish development committees, community development committees, and other bodies or entities within the public, private, and non-governmental sectors. As it relates to financing and financial management, important, of course, is prudent financial management, which is one of the hallmarks of good local governance. And so the framework, the legislative framework is in place to treat with financial management and also financing. In this regard, there are established revenue sources, parochial revenue fund, which will be discussed later, and the equalization fund. But local authorities generally may also impose fees in relation to any works or services which it is required or empowered to provide under the Local Governance Act or any other enactment. Always important are the people that serve in the local government fraternity, and so it is quite critical to have in place good employment practices. And the Local Government Unified Service and Employment Act of 2016 allows for the direction, deployment, management, supervision of unified service officers. It allows for disciplinary control. It also allows for recruitment, direction, deployment, management, supervision, and disciplinary control of all non-gazetted employees, and establishment of terms and conditions of service of such employees subject to applicable national policies and guidelines.
Chairman, I'm sorry, can I just ask Ms. Knight, are you referring to public sector employees in the local government arena or any employees?
All right, so there are different categories of employees. So generally we have those employees who are gazetted and they are under the purview directly on the Local Government Services Commission, and there are those other employees who would be on contract or other casual daily paid who would have to have provisions in place to treat with those categories of workers. So there are two sets, broadly.
Again, I'm asking, these are local government public service employees, not somebody working in a store I own?
No. Remember, the local government system is such that there are two categories of workers: those that fall under the Services Commission, and those persons, they are normally interviewed and appointed by the Services Commission. And of course, at the council, you would have other auxiliary staff, contract workers.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, quite right. As the last slide that I will take you through has to do with, at this time, the consideration for legislative amendments broadly, amendment to the Counties and Parishes Act 1867. The chairman would have done some writing in the paper recently treating with that legislation, which what it does really is broadly defines or describes what are the parishes currently and the names and that they should have a parish town. But there is no criteria set out in that legislation as it relates to what a parish should be. And also, the amendment to the first schedule of the Local Governance Act 2016 to list Portmore as a municipal corporation, which would be the administrative entity for a parish. So what I'm saying, in essence, or the ministry's position is, the legislative framework is there in terms to support the transition of Portmore City Municipality to to the municipal corporation if Portmore becomes the 15th parish. Thank you.
So some members, sorry, please, let me just emphasize for members, I don't want it to just pass. And I'm sure members are aware that the establishment of a parish, as it is right now, is currently governed under the Counties and Parish Act of 1867. Just a simple amendment would suffice. And of course, to change the status of the municipal council, which is now what Portmore is referred to, municipal corporation, to be a parish corporation.
Portmore City Municipality to Portmore Municipal Corporation by virtue of the Local Governance Act.
Still thinking about parish council, sorry. Is this new municipal corporation? Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, that is correct. So Ms. Knight has set out for us the legislative context, and we also felt it was important, sir, based on the concerns in respect of how we saw Portmore growing, to outline the background in respect of population and the development trends. And for this section of the presentation, I'm going to invite Ms. Simone Barnett, our Director for Urban and Regional Planning, who took some time to do some mapping to include the services and the development trends that we were seeing in Portmore compared to the other parishes over throughout the country. Ms. Barnett.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members, and my fellow colleagues. Afternoon. As would have been expressed earlier by my peers, that for a location, an area to be assigned parish status, one of the main things would be the development trends, growing development trends, and also as it relates increases in population. And this has been quite evident in Portmore, dating back as far as the 1991 census period that showed significant increases in Portmore's population. According to Statins 2011 census, Portmore has a population of 182,153 persons, which is actually a 16.41% increase over the previous census period, 1991, and which saw an increase of an additional 25,000, approximately 25,600 and odd persons, which also, I must add, would be or was an increase over the previous census period by approximately 61%. Portmore's population is one such that Portmore is indeed more populous than at least 8 other parishes. And in fact, Portmore's population is more than that of Hanover and Trelawney combined. And as expressed earlier, that as with even St. Anne being the largest parish physically, Portmore's population is even more than that of St. Anne. And it's just approximately 1,700 and odd less than the second city, St. James. Let me see, you know, for St. James, which has a second city in it, Mobile, right? So Portmore, in terms of its density and increases in density over time, has been growing at an alarming pace, right? And not just in terms of their population, but also in terms of development trends. In fact, Portmore over the last 10 years has maintained a development trend or issuing of development permits, building permits, far more than most of the other municipal corporations. In fact, Portmore is among the 3rd highest in terms of the number of applications they receive and approve, only just below Kingston and St. Andrew and the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation. Portmore's approval in terms of building permits.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry. In terms of what? Didn't hear what you said.
Building permits. Building
permits.
Sorry about that. In fact, it's Portmore's approval rate, or the number of approvals that they issue, permits they issue on an annual basis, or over the last 10 years, is actually even more than that of St. James, of a Clarendon, of a Trelawney, a St. Anne. So they are actually in the top 3. In fact, Portmore issued over 5,547 building approvals over the last 10 years, just second to St. Catherine and Kingston and St. Andrew.
Ms. Barnett, yes, those approvals include subdivision and addition on existing houses, right?
This particular report, sir, includes just the building permits.
Commercial or general?
Residential,
all
yes, sir. Yes,
addition?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Chairman, can I ask a question here? May I ask a question? For the building. Afterwards? Okay.
Barnett, sorry for the...
No problem, sir. Thank you. All right. In terms of the number of applications that Portmore received in terms of restrictive covenant modifications, over the years, Portmore has, for the last 5 years, Portmore has received or continues to receive a considerable number of requests and applications for modifications to restrictive covenants. So much so that they actually have had to assign a particular officer to undertake this task. Over the last 5 years, this has been over 600 applications that they have received just for the modification of restrictive covenants. The development trends in Portmore have also been consistent. From where in 2010 there was approximately 700 and odd building permits that were issued. We could look also even in 2016 when approximately 600 and odd applications or building permits were issued for that time period as well. You might see somewhat of a downturn in 2020. That is not in fact a downturn, but just that the data was gathered up to September 2020. Because we would have needed some time to gather the information for the final quarter. So that trend continues in terms of applications.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Barnett. And so Ms. Barnett was asked to pause here because we wanted to take some time to just reflect on NEPA's submission. And also, if I might just piggyback on what Mr. Barnett said earlier, that the continued trend sparks a demand for services. And the ministry is guided by the Provisional Development Order prepared by Portmore, and planning considerations articulated by the Portmore City Municipality and the National Environment and Planning Agency. These considerations include, if you recall, members, the historical significance of Portmore, the considerations for high-density development within the municipality, Member Morris, that is 125 and 250 habitable rooms per hectare and heights of between 4 to 6 floors, local economic initiatives for the municipality, and Portmore being developed as a smart location. The committees also asked to recall NEPA's presentation that articulated that size may not necessarily determine whether an area is named as a parish or not. Therefore, while Portmore would become the second smallest parish in Jamaica, it would be larger than such states as the Vatican City State, Principality of Monaco, Tuvalu, Republic of San Marino, and Principality of Liechtenstein. Therefore, in considering the population where Portmore is the 6th most populous, historically, Lawrence suggested that the creation of a new parish occurs due to expanding population and the development of more land space. Portmore could therefore be considered for parish status on this basis. NEPA further indicated that a major feature of most parishes is the designation of a capital, which is the administrative seat of local government, and proposed that the location of the existing municipal building could be adopted as a capital and be developed as such. A courthouse, a cultural center, would be the rationale in this sense and would incorporate some of the adjoining communities. SDC is here today, Mr. Chairman and members. The establishment of a new parish could therefore serve as a coordinated forum for the control and administration of activities within Portmore in a similar fashion to all other parishes that do not enjoy the high quantities of development applications as just explained by Ms. Barnett. You will agree, members, that as an urban area expands, the demand for services and the coordination thereof also expands or increases. And this has to be recognized within the context of the best quality of life being provided for our citizenry. Among the service areas to be considered are poor relief and homelessness relief, markets, cemeteries, health, education, infrastructure to include water, street lights, transportation, traffic management, recreation, environment, fire services, waste management, and other local services. And I will repeat, according to Mr. Barnett, who spoke just now, to effect a level of the services that must be provided, a coordinated effort amongst the stakeholders is required. Essential services currently offered in other parishes in comparison to Portmore as seen in the development order area are shown in the relevant maps, which Ms. Barnett will also present for you.
Thank you, Pierce. All right, I will go through, I'm not seeing it on the screen yet, but I will go through in terms of services what the other parishes have compared to Portmore, what Portmore has.
Members, as Ms. Barnett does this component of the presentation, the chart or the table that looks at the services by parish, you could also refer to that.
Thank you, Pierce. So in looking at the number of parks or major parks that each parish has, it must be observed that Hanover currently has no major parks. Neither does Westmoreland. Portmore indeed has none at this point in time, but there are actually plans to establish a climate change park in Portmore. But other major parishes too, at this point in time, either have no parks.
There are no parks in Portmore?
The climate change one. All right, I will go, instead of looking on my table just now, I will look according to follow what is on the screen there. So my apologies there. Let me go back there to cemeteries first. So Portmore doesn't have any cemetery at this point in time, but we do also have even Kingston and St. Andrew being such major parishes, but not actually having so many cemeteries either, notably just two. Manchester also only has 2 cemeteries, while Manchester is even one of those parishes that are populous, that is quite populous. I will go on. I will not go further in terms of the building approvals, which would be on the next slide, because I would have exhausted that section to say that Portmore is in the top 3 in terms of their building approvals over the last 10 years. Far more than that of a St. Thomas, a Portland, a St. Mary, even Manchester, even a Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, a Clarendon, a St. James. In terms of markets, Portmore currently has, as we know, Aquifer Village, right? But notably, other parishes also do not, or there are a number of other parishes that also do not have a lot of these services or markets, I must add. For Westmoreland, they only have 2. For Hanover, they only have two markets as well. Portland only has 4. St. James, major St. James, only has 2 markets as well. In terms of police stations, the number of police stations, Portmore has more police stations than Manchester, but has equal numbers in terms of police stations as a St. Thomas has. I will look at healthcare now. In terms of healthcare, Portmore, in fact, could benefit from additional healthcare services within the space given the growing population. And compared to other locations or other parishes, they definitely could benefit from more health services in Portmore given the growing demand in terms of the population. As required by Section 21 of the Local Governance Act, the local authorities do have quite a number of responsibilities, and Portmore's responsibility is has not been reduced, though it has not been assigned a parish status. It is given equal responsibilities as the other local authorities. And some of these services that the Portmore municipality would have provided or does provide include the market service, also in terms of, Portmore doesn't have any minor water supplies, but they also have transportation centers, which is equal to that as many numbers as Hanover, has Trelawney, it has equal amounts as Kingston and St. Andrew. So in terms of services, Portmore, yes, could benefit from some others, but there are also other major parishes that do, in terms of services, Portmore has either more services than some of these other parishes or as equal numbers. So Portmore rightfully can be assigned parish status based on its growing development trends and development activity, population growth and development activity. I may turn over back to my peers now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barnett. And so, essentially, the point, members and chairman, is even with some services not being present, I believe the question was asked of us, what would be required? And the fact is, if you have a growing population, growing households, growing residential situations, and other uses, the demand for services is naturally being created, and there is therefore a natural demand, and therefore when you are ascribed a certain status, it is almost an expectation that those services ought to be provided. So we're going to turn our attention now to our respective agencies that are present with us today, Mr. Chairman. And before we go there, I just want you to look carefully at the sheet that was provided. I know Member Morris, we gave this amendment just before coming in, but it's the same sheet, sir. It's just that we added transportation centers and abattoirs. And we have in this table included the population usually resident in parish compared to land size compared to the number of communities per parish. And so you get a good spread of what is happening in the respective parishes compared to Portmore, and you'll realize that Portmore is very competitive compared to the other parishes. And so, without saying much more, I'm going to invite Mr. Thompson or Mr. Glaze to put their position on the table in respect of Portmore being the 15th parish, the OTPEM.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, good afternoon, Chairman, good afternoon, members of the committee, and to all my colleagues on this side. We will look at first the fact that the entire island is vulnerable to disaster, and in that all parishes are vulnerable to disaster. But what we would have looked at specifically for the present municipality of Portmore is the risk profile based on hazard exposure. So for us as an island in Jamaica, we are exposed to various hydrometeorological events and as hazards, and for Portmore is no exception. So we will have sea flooding in Portmore caused from severe weather-related events, wind damages from storm systems, earthquake, and the fact that a large percentage of the communities within Portmore are coastal, exposure to the possibilities of tsunami. On the disaster risk management governance, you would have heard from Ms. Knight earlier in terms of various legislative framework that govern parishes. There is a robust disaster risk management framework in country, and we have a relatively new Disaster Risk Management Act, which we see at work in the present pandemic facing the country. We look within that, it sets out clearly the roles and responsibilities of parishes, and I will also make mention to the municipal components with Portmore as a municipality. It also looks at the local authorities, the establishment of the Parish Disaster Committee. One is existent in Portmore. It looks at having Parish Disaster Coordinator. There is one in Portmore at present, and aspects of the zonal committees and looking at disaster risk management or emergency teams within the parish setup. one of the concerns in looking at requirements for Portmore as a parish is looking at the size of Portmore, approximately a little bit over 17,000 hectares, and looking at the population size, which was mentioned earlier, which is a little bit over 182,000 persons. A concern for us is the fact that there cannot be any more further the growth in terms of looking at the development and spatial settlement patterns that governs any city or any location, whether it is linear, nucleated or dispersed type of settlement. So what we will see happening going forward with Portmore, if given the parish status, is more concentrated high-rise type of development, which would give a great requirement for your kind of emergency management services, looking at a greater upgrading of those emergency management services, such as the JFB is here, and so they will get into that a little bit more into that in terms of fire services, emergency medical services, and looking also at the public health and public health requirements and also public safety requirements, which is an essential component for any kind of municipal development or growth, and further requirement for parish growth. So those are some of the concerns. So within that, you would have to take greater account into the development of hospitals or a hospital within Portmore, and the kind of public emergency requirements that will come about from that, given the present population and the size of Portmore. So I'll hand over to Mr. Glaze for him to add a little bit further, or you're good?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I believe you also spoke to the need for the effective disaster risk management approach.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members, I'll now ask the JFB's team to do their presentation.
Thank you, Madam Pierce. Mr. Chairman, other members of this committee, fellow colleagues, good afternoon. Just to provide a background, Jamaica Fire Brigade was established by Act of 1988 with responsibility for saving lives and protecting property. Now, since 1995, the Jamaica Fire Brigade has come together as a single entity where all the municipal fire services were done away with, and they came under the auspices of the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Now, at that time, we had 33 fire stations, and these fire stations were established mainly in the townships. But since then, there has been a lot of development. Risk patterns have changed, both in major cities and other inland towns. We are now here looking at Portmore becoming the 15th parish. So if we zero in on Portmore as it relates to fire services, currently we only have the Waterford Fire Station, which serves the entire Portmore community. Now, if we refer back to the statistics as outlined by my colleagues, the census of 2011 showed that there were 182,000 residents in Portmore, and since then there has been a 4% increase annually. Therefore, the population that the fire brigade now serves is quite an extensive one, and with one fire station, it has been proving some amount of challenge. Now, our fire cover review from the Fire Brigade was done in 2009, and since then has been updated in 2019. And it has shown that there needs to be improvement or increase in the number of fire stations in order to give the kind of coverage that the citizenry of Portmore requires. Now, some of the challenges that it would have presented, the long travel distance that this one fire station has to travel in actually servicing the community of Portmore. By way of the NFPA standards, from the time of receiving a call to reaching the fire scene, 4 minutes is the acceptable standard. But with Waterford, moving from Waterford up into Elsha, you could take approximately 20 minutes thereabout in order to reach some of these communities, and therefore we believe that more fire stations, and supported by the fire cover review, 3 additional fire stations would be needed in order to serve the community of Portmore. So response time is very critical. Population density of Portmore, which was spoken about. Portmore is a very dense community, and it poses challenge for traffic, of monitoring through traffic in order to respond to calls. So with increased fire stations, there would be increased fire services that would be available to the citizenry within Portmore, to include emergency medical services, fire prevention services, among others. So we are also seeing major development taking place in the Bernard Lodge area, Shooters Hill, Elshire. And with these communities coming on board, then we believe that it is important for new fire stations to be looked at to be built in these areas, which will serve the community of Portmore. We believe that there are a lot of benefits to be derived from these new facilities. We know that when there are fires, the environment is negatively affected as we lose flora and fauna. We believe that building a fire station will lead to employment of persons in and around Portmore during the build stage, as well as being employed as firefighters and other civilians who will be required to work at the fire stations. So all in all, the Portmore becoming the 15th parish, we are in support of it, whatever we are putting on the table. That there are some critical resources that will be needed in order to bolster the fire brigade presence in that area in order to deliver critical service to the people of Portmore and its environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Members, I now ask you to go with Ms. Aisha Hope as she indicates the position of the SDC.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, PS, other colleagues represented here. Okay, as an agency of the government of Jamaica and pursuant to its legal mandate, as well as the emerging government policies and legislation, the Social Development Commission stands ready to continue advancing community development across the country. The SDC also is mindful of the delicate balance between policy, is also mindful of the delicate balance between policy formulation and implementation vis-a-vis social and community buy-in. Hence, the SDC's comments concerning Portmore becoming a parish will not encapsulate an opinion for or against the proposal, but will outline how, through our legal mandate and strategic position in communities, we can facilitate the anticipated process of community engagement, sensitization, and data gathering in keeping with the participatory governance framework. The SDC's legal mandate is a principle of community development, the lead community development agency working with Jamaica's 775 communities, positioned in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. The SDC continues to execute its legal mandate to inter alia promote and control schemes for and to do any act or thing which may directly or indirectly serve the advancement of sports, social, cultural, and economic development for the people of Jamaica and workers in particular. In terms of a strategic advantage for SDC currently, among our several programs for community development, the following three underpins our integrated community development strategy and represent a strategic advantage in the local development landscape: the strengthening of the participatory governance framework and local economic development support, community research and development planning, which includes priority planning and project development, the latter being the most fundamental in ensuring that projects, policies, and plans are evidence-based, as well as ensure a high degree of support and community buy-in. In support of the integrated community development strategy is based on strong community governance mechanisms, reliable data for evidence-based planning, and community responses through projects aimed at addressing priority issues. The SDC is also well known for its exceptional track record on community mobilization, ranging from community consultations or public education and sensitization, such as the well-noted property tax town hall across the country, conducted on behalf of our parent ministry. So, in terms of our medium-term strategic priorities, improve local governance by building and strengthening civil society organizations, which would include our community development committees. Increase community participation and economic benefits through initiatives for local economic development, and particular emphasis on rural communities. Expand the database of our community listings, maps, profiles, etc. And let me just speak a few seconds on the current work in Portmore, the status of our work in Portmore. Based on the foregoing mandate, which I just mentioned, and strategic priorities, the SDC's work in Portmore municipality to date would have included 13 communities on record, with one additional community identified, which will bring the total to 14 once our research department updates the official community listing. Our database also has on record 11 community development committees in furtherance of improving local governance and 11 local economic initiatives in furtherance of increasing grassroots enterprise and benefiting from community economic activities. Given the aforementioned data, in tandem with the population of Portmore, the SDC saw it fit to establish an office in Portmore. So we actually have a dedicated office which operates as a parish office in Portmore. So St. Catherine actually has two offices serving the residents. While this has been done, the Commission recognizes that each location has its own peculiarities and require ongoing research and engagement in order to ensure that our approach is true to the participatory governance framework, thus assuring outcomes that are inclusive. So in concluding, given that the government of Jamaica values data and an engaged and informed citizenry, the SDC stands ready to provide existing data as well as support the acquisition of further data as may be required to inform the deliberations around Portmore becoming a parish. And that's pretty much our position at this time from a SDC perspective. In terms of the two programs, the two major activities that we are prepared to do currently: community research and data gathering, and community mobilization and sensitization. And already I know that the civil society in Portmore have been preparing positions and making inquiries regarding being a part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, my dear sister Aishiwawa. Chika, Louis, it's your turn. Board of Supervision, Relief of Poverty and Destitution.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. I will be speaking on the Board of Supervision and specifically the system of poor relief, which is the ministry's arm of the social protection and welfare program, which are administered by the municipal corporations. Each municipal corporation has a poor relief department, which caters to a number of persons who are considered to be destitute, living below the poverty line, and or in need of institutional care, which are administered through our infirmaries and the Golden Age homes. We believe that the Portmore Parish would benefit from the services of the poor relief departments and an infirmary, as the rapid population growth will eventually lead to various economic displacement and will warrant these programs. There's always a need for social protection services, which poor relief stands ready to provide. Currently, the persons in Portmore are served naturally by the St. Catherine Poor Relief Department. That department now has a little under 2,000 persons to whom they cater. Of that number, approximately 200 persons are from the Portmore area. We also have persons within our infirmaries who actually are from the Portmore area as well. The provision of these services will, of course, increase access by those persons who will need it in this region, and population growth normally gives rise to a type of urban poverty which would need to be addressed. Our homeless program is currently also provided from the poor relief departments, and meals are actually catered from the Spanish Town drop-in center and taken over to Portmore. Our last survey was done in 2017, and we have approximately 40 homeless and street persons in the Portmore area. Homeless and street. 40, yes. It may be more. That survey was from 2017, and we're due to do a new survey. These departments are manned by poor relief officers who are social workers who engage in case management and also offer temporary relief for persons who are in need, who may have suffered from a fire, a disaster, or those other types of situations that would put you in a temporary space that you would need assistance from the government. Yes?
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. And as we wrap up our agencies and move to the next component, I'm just going to ask Mr. Edson Carr of the NSWMA to put the agency's position on the table.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman, members of the committee, and my fellow colleagues at the Ministry of Local Government and our agencies. As you would know, the NSWMA is responsible for the management of solid waste across the island. This includes the collection, transportation, and final disposal of our municipal waste. It is the position of NSWMA to go ahead with Portmore being the 15th parish, as the modality and efficiency of our collections would not change with this designation. Portmore is located within the Riverton Wayshed, which is comprised of St. Catherine, St. Andrew, and Kingston and St. Thomas, and it's serviced by 2 disposal sites, the Riverton disposal site as well as the Church Corner disposal site. and Portmore would be served by the Riverton disposal site. Portmore receives collection as per our collection schedule, and we aim to at least do a once per week collection within the community. Currently, our greatest problems within Portmore and Jamaica on a whole is the socio-environmental practices of our citizens. And NSWMA has sought to change this through consistent and sustainable community relations campaigns. This will focus primarily on the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycling, as well as coming together to do several campaigns across the island that will seek to decrease the number of illegal disposal sites, as well as doing recycling campaigns and working primarily towards composting. The focus on the 3 R's is primarily important, as data has proven that the use of reduction, and recycling has significantly reduced the waste generated within an area. Portmore, by location, is uniquely adapted based on its spatial layout to have consistent and efficient collection of garbage, based on the fact that the majority of Portmore is properly planned, and that the parish, once designated, would not have as much informal settlements as others. So the efficiency of solid waste collection within the Portmore would be optimal. Also, what we would like to do within Portmore is to facilitate increased allocations of trucks and improve containerization, based on the fact that Portmore is expected to grow based on its urban boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carr. And now, just to remind the members, having listened to the contributions of the respective agencies, I know this chart is a little small, but you would have had it in your presentation in hard copy format, I believe. It was amongst the updated document. So having asked the ministry to indicate whether Portmore would benefit from support from the PRF, the answer is yes. And you further asked whether the proportion or percentage of the property taxes, or to indicate the proportion or percentage of property taxes collected by Portmore, which forms the PRF, as opposed to the amounts contributed overall by the parish of St. Catherine, and the level of compliance in respect of property tax collections from the residents of the Portmore municipality. I'll ask Ms. Anne-Marie Malcolm on behalf of the agencies to the branch, to do that presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee, PS, and colleagues. Today I want to speak about the compliance in Portmore, and first I'm going to look at the number of registered properties in Portmore, which equals to 45,033. The total obligation is 310 million. Presently, for 2021, the collection is over 244 million. Looking at the proportion or percentage collection that forms a part of the parochial revenue fund, 2021, it's 2.9%. Overall, when included with St. Catherine, it's 11.4%. The percentage of compliance in property tax collection from residents equals to 54%. What is happening is that for the number of registered properties, presently, the properties that are fully paid compliant is 22,252. 2017 has partially paid, whether half or some amount on their properties, and 20,764 properties has not made any payments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Malcolm. And so, Chairman, in concluding, we have to reserve some time for questions, of course, time being 4:35. Okay. So the concluding statement that we would like to put on the record today is that the creation of Portmore as a parish, and by extension the 15th parish, will accrue benefits of strengthened service delivery, greater administrative responsibility, enhanced community and local economic development given the expanding population. This is especially important in an evolving environment where we are required to be more proactive and responsive to the needs of the populace. Portmore has its place as a smart location. Sir and members, I believe that in summary is the ministry's presentation, and we thank you for having us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Pace, and your team for lending clarity and giving us a very detailed and comprehensive presentation on the whole matter of Portmore becoming the 15th parish. I personally believe that the team at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development are best placed to advise us more than any other government entity, because you are the ones really managing the local authorities throughout the country. Before I allow my colleagues to ask questions, looking at the data and the presentation on a whole, you have basically answered most, if not all, the burning questions out there. But I want you to lend some more clarity to the whole matter of revenue. You know, that has been a burning issue. And there are a lot of persons out there spreading propaganda, for want of a better word, misinforming the public that if Portmore should become a parish, then it will result in a reduction in revenue for the area that will be designated as the parish of Portmore to be used to manage the area.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to invite Mr. Rupert Price, the Senior Director for the Parochial Revenue Fund branch, to maybe give you a slight, well, let me not say, I'm not sure how much detail you have, some information in this regard.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members, and good afternoon, colleagues. Chair, the Portmore becoming the 15th parish would not be affected by the fund that comes from the Parochial Revenue Fund, because currently they're getting their own source of funding. They're currently getting their own source of funding independently of the other parish councils. So they're getting their own property taxes and they're getting their own maintenance funding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Member Campbell Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions, but before I ask the questions, let me just say that this was excellent. It was thorough, it was detailed, it was well presented, and so you have made our lives much easier because you have provided us with details that we can use to make decisions or to influence decisions. I just had a few questions based on the presentation and some of the questions which have arisen in the public sphere. So bear with me. In terms of the building permits, I notice in the document here, it outlines that Portmore has a significant number of building permits. Are we saying, Mr. Price, that the building permits, are they issued directly from Portmore, or is St. Catherine Parish Council involved?
Okay. Afternoon, if I may answer. The Portmore, given their status as a city municipality, issue their own building permits. So St. Catherine issue building permits, and Portmore has also that responsibility to issue building permits. So in terms of the number of approvals and number of building permits issued on an annual basis or over the last 10 years, Portmore has issued just a little bit less than St. Catherine.
Relative to other parishes, has Portmore issued more?
More, far more. So Kingston and St. Andrew has issued the most permits over the last 10 years. St. Catherine in second, and Portmore is the location or city municipality or local authority issuing the third highest in terms of building permits.
And are they currently receiving all the monies from that, which would go to a...
Yes, indeed, member.
Okay, and in terms of cemeteries, the argument is sometimes made that Portmore doesn't have a cemetery and as such it shouldn't be a parish. I'm not sure if anyone has the data here, but Dovecot, many people in Kingston are buried in Dovecot, right? So I just want to know it's not just my mind or the mind of Dr. Wheatley or the mind of MP Miller that you can be buried, and a lot of people are buried outside their parish. Am I correct? I just want the Hansard to pick it up. Can somebody open a mic?
Yes, you
Please?
are correct.
Yes, ma'am. I don't believe there's any restriction about anyone being
No,
buried
not
in
just a
another
restriction,
parish.
but do we have a situation where people are leaving other parishes to be buried in Dovecot? Is that something?
Yes.
I just want the Hansard to pick it up.
Yes.
Yes, member. I
Yes?
believe that is the situation.
Okay. So you don't need...
Member Rodriguez, you know, it comes across as a bit funny, but it is true.
It is true.
It is
I believe 90% of the persons who are being buried in the Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Catherine, they are buried in either Dovecot or Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, I trust they take their coffins with them when they move, and they don't go asking for new coffins where they go.
I do hope so as well.
So I'm just trying to see if we can answer many of the questions, and that's one of the main questions, that Portmore has no cemetery. But we have a situation where Dovecot, which is in the parish of St. Catherine, has a lot of residents that are from outside the parish, correct? Oh, excuse me, turn on your mic. I just need the Hansard people to pick it up.
Dovecot and Meadowrest are the two major cemeteries that support Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine, and parts of Clarendon.
Thank you so much for that. And then another question I had was in relation to poor relief. Correct me, you're saying that for the parish of St. Catherine, you probably have a little over 2,000 persons registered for poor relief?
That's correct.
And only about 200 out of Portmore? So 10%?
Yes, that's correct.
And just for my own understanding, is it possible, is it feasible, are there any rules to prevent, let us say Portmore becomes a parish, and with such a small number of persons needing the services of poor relief, is it possible for Portmore to then just have an arrangement with St. Catherine? Is it something that's legally possible?
The Poor Relief Act actually gives rise to each parish having its own poor relief department. One of the factors that may contribute to Portmore having such a low uptake at this time is possibly the geography. Persons are poor, so it would be difficult. So I'm assuming it's access. So if we create the access, we would actually have more persons who benefit from the system.
And another question is, in other parishes, let us go with St. Thomas, St. Mary, that is small, how many persons do you normally have on the poor relief roll?
In St. Mary, we have 533 persons on the roll at this moment, but do remember that we provide temporary relief as well.
Okay.
So it's a constant flow in our offices of persons coming in seeking assistance.
So Portmore still has a low number relative to other parishes, so it won't be pulling too much from the system, much more than other parishes.
At this
I
moment.
think, remember, it's not about pulling more from the system. As Ms. Lewis stated earlier, I believe the proximity of the poor relief office, the department, it being in Spanish Town, is maybe a limiting factor for the uptake of the service. And Portmore now, so one has to recognize that the Poor Relief Act recognizes parishes, right? Not municipal corporation, parishes.
Okay.
So the Poor Relief Act is very specific. And now, Portmore becoming a parish, it will now be entitled to its own Poor Relief Department.
Right.
And it being in close proximity to the communities within Portmore, maybe we will see a greater uptake of the service.
And then one final question, I think, in terms of one argument that is also made is that Portmore doesn't have a public hospital of its own. I don't know if anybody in here, anyone from the relevant department, how long does it take from Springfield in St. Mary to get to a major hospital, public hospital? Sorry? I can't hear you. And how, you have to use your mic.
About 30 minutes.
Okay. And how long does it take from Portmore to get to Spanish Town Hospital or KPH?
15, 10 minutes, depending on how you're driving.
Okay. So based on that response, we can say that even though Portmore itself does not have a hospital, access to two hospitals are still, the access to those hospitals still closer than many parishes to get from one community to a hospital. Am I correct?
You're correct. And roughly 20 minutes to KPH. If you're
okay, so and you have both KPH 20 minutes and Spanish Town Hospital 15 minutes. Okay, and then in terms of the fire service, Waterford is to one end. Let's call it an end of Portmore.
Correct.
And the furthest point, and MP Miller, help me if I'm wrong,
Hellshire.
even though I grew up in Portmore, from Waterford, the furthest point in Portmore will be Hellshire.
Correct.
Right? Either by the beach or by Johnson Hill section.
Oh, correct.
How long does it take you? You said about 20 minutes?
That's possible. That's thereabout.
Okay. And so if I am up in the hills, let me not pick on my parish of St. Mary again because, you know, MP Montague might wonder why I'm picking on the parish. So is my island, I can pick on any parish. So let us say then that you're up in the hills of St. Thomas. And where is that's your parish, PS? Okay. So you're up in the hills of St. Thomas. How long, where is the fire station in St. Thomas? How many fire stations are there?
Morant Bay and Yalas, too.
Sorry?
Morant Bay and Yalas.
How long does it take to get to the furthest point, approximately?
If you're talking about the furthest point, you're talking about 1 hour plus.
Okay, so in St. Thomas, which is already a parish, it takes over an hour to move from a fire station to the furthest point. But in Portmore, it takes 20 minutes. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
But nevertheless, we would want it to be...
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't get another one. I'm not saying you shouldn't have more. I'm saying to the persons who are proclaiming that that without more fire stations you can't have a parish, I'm just trying to make the point that it is possible based on what currently exists.
Member Campbell Rodriguez, thank you for that intervention. I know for a fact that you know, we can all do with improved services and improvement in the infrastructure at all levels. You know, and I think the point that Member Campbell Rodriguez was trying to make or made was that despite the need for improvement, we are in a very good, relatively good position compared to a number of other parishes, and that point is well taken, member. Member Miller, you wanted to ask a question? Member Morris, you wanted to ask a question, sir?
Yes. I just have some questions and clarifications that I need. The member who presented on the data in terms of the collection of property taxes had indicated that there was a $310 million annual projection, and so far there is, I think, 244 million that has been collected. But yet still, we see where, from what has been presented, I think is about 50% of the population, or just below 50%, have contributed or paid over their taxes thus far. Am I to understand that the bulk of the taxes is being paid by a smaller percentage of the population? I need to get some clarity on that because I wasn't clear in terms of those data. And then, you know, I have to go to Mr. Thompson on one of my favorite topics, which is as it relates to provision of services and to make sure that persons with disabilities are catered to in the times of natural disasters. How prepared is Portmore in light of the fact that a significant portion of the disabled population of Jamaica resides on the southern belt of the island? How prepared is Portmore to deal with natural disasters and to the movement of persons with disabilities into protective shelter? And the final question that I want to ask is, again, related to the disabled population, because of, I know, and you, Chairman, would be aware as well, that a significant portion of persons with disabilities reside in the Portmore area. In terms of creating accessible facilities in the Portmore space, are we seeing an implementation of the building code to make sure that these building permits that are being granted are being, the facilities are made accessible to persons with disabilities? And Madam Permanent Secretary, are we prepared to use some of those funds collected from building permits to improve existing or older buildings that have no access features for persons with disabilities? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll allow Mr. Thompson to respond first.
Thank you, PS. Good afternoon again, everyone. Good afternoon, Member Morris. Thanks for your question. Portmore we have done good work, I would say, in Portmore in the past in terms of looking at our population with disabilities and making the necessary provisions for them. Portmore have basically the prototype shelter facility as it relates to providing access for persons with disabilities. And we would have done that 2013 or 2014, doing retrofitting with the Nogazed Primary and having in-depth work and in-depth discussion with the Disabilities Foundation in terms of how we would move forward in ensuring that every single shelter, not only in Portmore as a municipality, St. Catherine as a parish, but also the other parishes across Jamaica, to ensure that no one is being left behind in terms of shelter provision and ensuring that we are providing all the basic necessary amenities for the general public. So we would have done significant work in Portmore in that, and we will continue to ensure that that work continues across the parishes in Jamaica.
Thompson, Ms. Malcolm, clarification for Member Morris.
Okay, as we look at the collection and the percentage, if we look back at the data for 2018, 2019, you see that there's a 74% compliance in paying property taxes amongst the residents and the population in Portmore. As 2019, 2020 steps in, with the pandemic stepping in at the latter part of the year, you see that there was, it was 59% collection. But as 2021, a lot of persons possibly unemployed, and as a result, the percentage went down by 54% to 54%. Gradually, as we come out of this pandemic, there will be an increase in the compliance level among persons as the economy grows.
And even with that, the ministry would have taken active steps to interact with the TAJ with a view to strengthen our sensitization and public education in creating alternatives so that persons who desire to pay could pay or can pay. So there's a robust thrust ahead to strengthen the compliance effort, not just in Portmore, but nationally. In respect of this, the third question, though, sir, I believe some of what you have put on the table is worthwhile to consider, and we will take that under consideration. But I don't believe I could speak to it strictly today because it would require some kind of collaboration and discussion at a policy level, sir.
All right, thank you very much, PS. Thank you very much, members. I just thought, PS, and to members, that we are at the beginning of the financial year, right, in the second month of the financial year, and we have collected maybe 50% of the property taxes to date for this financial year, based on the data before us. So we still have another 10 months to encourage persons to pay their property taxes. So it's not bad, because if you look at last year, it's 59% overall for that entire financial year. And we are just over 50% in this, almost 2 months. So it's not that bad. And we have to appreciate the situation that we are faced right now, the economic situation. Let me thank you, Permanent Secretary, and your team from the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development for this very informative and very thorough presentation. I must say that the wait was well worth it. And I'm glad to see you and your team out in your numbers. Thank you very much on behalf of the members for coming and informing us as to the role and the work of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. It was worth the wait. Okay, all right. Members, any other business? Yes, member.
Just to say thank you all for the presentation, PS, and your team. And if Portmore, when it becomes a parish, we can look at starting the recycling process in Jamaica, in Portmore, in terms of our waste.
Any other matter?
The other matter I would like to say, sir, is a personal thank you to my team. Despite all the challenges, we were able to pull everything together to have received the commendation today. And I also want to thank Mrs. Douglas Beckford, who was quite patient with me and my team. Thank you, madam.
All right, thank you very much, PS. Members, the JPS was invited. The entity has declined the invitation to make an oral presentation. Did they make and they have given us a written presentation. The Ministry of Health, we received a submission from them, and they are available to make a virtual presentation. They are in the middle of everything right now, this pandemic. And so we will have to take a decision, I believe, round robin amongst ourselves as to date of our next meeting. Looking at the month of May, there's virtually no space on the calendar for the month of May, with all the committees working and, of course, the sectoral debate as well. So we'll have to do a little round robin amongst ourselves to see when next we meet. But I'm sure that we must have a meeting in May, and also we have to see how we can accommodate virtual meetings as well, even the presentation being virtual. So let us run robin and see how we can accommodate even the virtual presentation from the entities. All right, members, there be no other matter for us to discuss. Can I have a motion for us to adjourn?
So moved, Chairman.
Moved by Member Golden Campbell, seconded by Member Miller. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Have a good evening.
Of the DRF in violence prevention in our society is to mediate. We believe that mediation is really a very good thing in terms of resolving disputes at the court level, at the parish court level, and at the Supreme Court level. Now, let me tell you about some of the matters that may come at the parish court levels. You and I live in a tenement yard.